Okay, so now that we have all of our div tags removed and changed to the semantic elements, you can still use div tags when they're needed. They still serve a purpose. But the div tags that we were using, what we were using them for, there are semantic tags for them. So now that we've removed those divs and their classes that we gave them, I want to look at how we can go about styling these elements without the classes or IDs. So looking at this, we can think about our HTML as a family structure, and when we do our indenting properly, that really helps to get that view. So here we have the body tag is this parent, and then each of these next elements in are the body's children, and then inside each of those elements they have their own children and more children, drilling down, so you have children, grandchildren, and so on. And there are so many there's a number of descendants that can go as deep as it needs to, depending on how much you need to nest that. Now this structure, I have an image here to help kind of visualize that a little bit better, starting with if you think about this as a family tree, body is the parent, and then body has header, section, and footer as children, and then header has H1 and P as children, section has header, article, header, and section as its children, footer has this paragraph tag as its child, and then each of these children under the section have a child of their own. So the header has the H2, the article has a paragraph, header has an H2, and the section has a paragraph. So if we think about that in the family structure, this that will help some of this make a little bit more sense. So here I want to go into our CSS. So this page header element or class that we were using before, we were using for this header. But since we don't have that class on here anymore, if we want to specifically select just this or just any header that's inside of the body, depending on how we want to select that, we're going to look at just selecting the headers that are direct children of the body, because we only have one here right now. So instead of this class selector, I'm going to use body greater than header, which basically says I want to select any header that is a direct child of the body tag. So when I save this, I can refresh my page, and this header is the only one that got styled. And we can see we do have other headers in here, but these headers aren't direct children of the body. This header's a grandchild, this header's a grandchild, so they're not getting styled with this. Now, if I did have another header in here, I'm going to copy this and put it just above my footer, so we can see that will also be styled this way because it is a direct child of the body tag. But if I didn't want this bottom one to be styled, then we're going to have to look at a different selector. And these selectors, you can find them on the W3 Schools CSS Selectors reference. If you're not sure, like we talked about the element and then class name. We talked about selecting by ID. That should be in here somewhere. And a lot of different ways that you can select these elements. So if you weren't sure and you only wanted to select this one header that was the first child of a body tag, or the first header that you came across inside the body tag, or whatever that structure might be, you can go through here, there's that ID I mentioned, and see which one of these would select that. And then looking through here, we can see selects the first P element that is placed immediately after div elements. We don't want that one. That will select the first one after that closing element. We can see that here if we do the try it yourself. We can see that my best friend is Mickey. That's this line, and it's the first paragraph that comes right after this div element closed. So if I move this, I will not be styled above that one, then this one that says I will not be styled will actually be styled. So we can kind of see how that works, but that's because this is the first one after that div is closed. And you can do that with a lot of these and try out some of those different ones if you want to. First child. So this would select every P tag element that is the first child of its parent. So we can use that to build our selector. So here, so I want the based on that header colon first dash child, that will select that element, but there is a problem because it's going to select other elements as well, because it's just selecting a header that is the first child of its parent. So this body, this header is the first child of the body tag. This header is the first child of the section. That's not quite what I wanted. So I can stack these selectors together, and I want to tell it only look directly in the body tag. So a header that is the first child of the body, that is also a direct child of that body element, and not go any further into this. So now when I refresh my page, I'm selecting this. I'm selecting only a header that is a direct child of the body, as well as only the first header inside of the body. That way I'm not selecting anything else. I didn't have to use a class or an ID to select this. I could if I wanted to, if that was the way I was going to go about it. But you're going to potentially run into things where you don't always have access to modify the HTML that you're working with. And this is something that can be handy, is knowing how to work with that structure that something else is creating. So now that we have this selected and styled the way we want it, this body content class, that's what we had on the div that used to be where this section is located. And again, we have multiple sections, so we probably don't want to style all of those the same. So I am going to select just this section, or just any section that is a direct child of the body. And we looked at that a minute ago, so we can do body greater than section to be able to select those. So now when I save this and I refresh the page, now I have that font size changed just in or for the section that's just inside of the body. And that does trickle down through the other elements unless that gets changed somewhere else. So now we have that taken care of. The next thing we have is the section header. So we had a different div, or a different class and div for these section headers. So we want any header that is excuse me, a direct child of a section. Again, which for this, that's fine. So section greater than header. And then we refresh our page and we can see that there were some changes to those. I'm going to change these to background colors. because it's a lot easier to see these changes happening when we're refreshing the page. So background color green. I'm going to copy this and just change the color. Yellow. That one has a background color, and so does this one, so they're fine. So now when I refresh this, I can see the body section has this green background. And the section greater than header has the yellow background, so these headers that are direct children of that section. Now the section content. The section content was what we have, this article and this section. And I could tell it that I want all sections and articles to have a certain look to them, but that could potentially mess with some things, so I want to make sure that they are only children of section. And to do that, again, if I don't care how deep it goes, I could just say section space article, and that is going to look anywhere inside of this section or any section for an article tag, and change it to the background color of purple and the color of yellow. So when I refresh my page, here's this background color being purple, and I have a period here instead of a semicolon, so that broke my style. And now this color is yellow as well. And that's because this is in an article, this one is in a section, so it didn't style that. If I want to put multiple elements together and give them the same style, I can just separate those with a comma. So here, section, section, so that it's finding any sections that are children of a section element and any articles that are children of a section element. And when I refresh this, I can see that now that is also getting those styles. And then here, because you can use a footer inside of sections and articles, but this one is intended to be the page footer that we had styled originally, I can use the same logic that I used for this header to make sure that I got the first one, to work through making sure that I got the last one. So here I can say body greater than, because I only want the footer that happens to be the immediate child of the body tag. And just in case there's another footer in there somewhere, I want to make sure that I am styling the footer that is the last child. So before I refresh my page, like we can see, this is still a white background and everything. And in here we have this footer. So if I have another footer here on the same level, because here I have footer, header, footer, section. So those are all direct children of my body tag. So now when I refresh this, I can see this footer is still white with the black text and that header. But this footer took on that new styling because it's the last child of that element, or the last footer of that element. So there I can see how that is working. And now, like we had looked at, there are a lot of different types of selectors in here, but having kind of an understanding of some of these things that we've talked about can be really, really helpful in making sure that you're selecting the elements that you need to. And Depending on the situation, like I said, you may not have access to the HTML, so you may not be able to add a class or ID to an element to be able to style it. So you'll need to know how to use these structures to select elements at different levels.